Try that again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chris.
Thank you. I'm awake now. I needed that. So, good morning and welcome to the Inside of Greater Phoenix. We're your secular oasis here in the Valley. I'm your host and president, Chris Wojno, and today's events are brought to you by you, the generous donors of our group. Thank you so much for all your donations and for being members, those of you who are members. We do depend on your support to make sure that we keep doing what we're doing. So if you'd like to be a member, come see Elizabeth at the end of the talk. We have a fire alarm going on here. Speaking of which, if you do have a cell phone that makes fire alarm noises or any other type of noise, you can turn that off now, please. You get a pass because I didn't do the announcement, so that's okay. So yes, how's breakfast? Pretty good?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's thank our breakfast crew for putting that together. And if you'd like to bring in a casserole or two, we could always use those. Those really kind of make sure breakfast gets a little bit of protein in there. So if you got a casserole you'd like to make, we'd love to have it in there, have it in the back. So please do feel free to bring casseroles or any type of snacks. I'll take payment in cookies, muffins, donuts. Cash. Anita will take the cash. I'll take the donuts. Yeah, we could always use that too. Anybody get their PIN for the first time today? Anybody here get their PIN for the first time? All right, maybe next time. We have our pins here, our little humanist pins.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, so if you become a member, you get your very own pin, and we'll give it to you at our pinning ceremony here at the beginning of our meetings.
It's a hazing.
Hazing. Yeah. It's not that kind of pinning. We'll be having a Flying Spaghetti Monster planning session meeting. The dinner is going to be in October, but if you'd like to help plan it, we could really use your help. So if you're willing to stay just a few more minutes after the Sunday speaker today, and we'll have it out here. And we'd love to have your help to make it a really awesome, it is a fundraiser, so it's going to be a really awesome fundraiser with your help. So just stay afterwards, and we could always use your help. We going to lunch today?
Yes, we are.
You want to come up and tell us about lunch?
All right. Yeah.
I will do so. As usual, we do have a lunch crowd going to the family community restaurant, the Mesa Family Community Restaurant that's around the corner, and everybody's welcome to come. And in fact, you can come even if you had a great breakfast, which I know the breakfast was great today. But we have a lot of people that come and just have coffee or iced tea or something like that. And it's a great time to socialize and talk about the craziest topics you can imagine. And some of the topics we'll be talking about at lunch today will include what we're talking about today. Our speaker is going to join us for lunch. So if you are interested in coming to continue that conversation or to talk about other wild and crazy things that humanists do have a tendency to talk about, then come to lunch with us. It's at the Mesa Community Restaurant. I know I said family earlier, but I think if you're looking on your phone, it's the Mesa Community Restaurant. And if you need directions to it, just talk to me immediately after the meeting, and I'll give you directions to get over there. We have reservations at noon, and as always, we do have our own favorite waitress, and we have our own room, our private room back in the back. So it's a great place to go and find out what humanists really talk about behind everybody else's back. And with that, I'll give it back to Chris.
Trying to make the world a better place. That's what we do. And we should start doing it to people's fronts. That might make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of putting up a front here, I'm looking for a historian. And what we need is somebody to help us document what we're doing here, because this is important to the country. It's important on a national scale and even a global scale. So I think it would be an awesome idea if we had somebody to help us document what we do here so that other people can learn from our examples and really feel inspired by what we do here. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to talk to you. You can come up and talk to me after the meeting. Think about it. It's really cool, and you get a cool title. So yeah. It's all about the titles. I already covered that one. Bruce, would you like to come up and talk about our rehearsals today?
Yes. Must have the regalia.
Break it down, B-Man.
Okay, good news, good news, good news. You still have an opportunity to join the fabulous, sensational Pastafarian singers. This will be our final rehearsal, so if you'd like to be a part of that, we had a good group turnout last week, and looking forward to having as many as would care to sing with us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bruce. It's going to be a lot of fun. He's written these pieces himself, and you're going to be singing to us at our Flying Spaghetti Monster dinner and leading us in our song. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you've got any talent at all, or no talent, doesn't matter. As long as you're willing to sing enthusiastically,
Yes.
that's the only prerequisite.
In the library, right after.
Library, yes, 5 minutes after the proceedings.
5 minutes after this meeting in the library.
Clean up first.
Sure, you can clean up first.
Demanding.
Okay, so as usual, every Monday night we have Smart Recovery. If you want to join us, if you have some sort of addiction, it could be food-based, alcohol, drug, we have a Smart Recovery meeting every Monday night right here, it's 7 o'clock. Come on by, it's just a peer-to-peer support group. We're having our next Let's Geography this Wednesday, August 15th at 7 p.m. I can't believe it's almost halfway through August already. I feel like July just started.
Why Wednesday when it's on the calendar for Thursday?
No, it's not on the calendar.
Did I put it on good?
It was, because Tori's coming
It's
up.
Wednesday.
He'll
It's
tell
Wednesday
you
this
the
month.
thing.
Wednesday this month. Thanks for the clarification, Mary. Wednesday this month. So this month is going to be on Suriname, and I'd love to tell you more about it, but I have no idea because that's what this group is about, is learning about this place, so I can't tell you. You have to come. How's that for a teaser? You have to come and find out what is Suriname, where is it on a map, so that way you can point to it during a John Oliver special when he eventually will say this is Suriname and then points to some other country. You know it's coming. It's going to happen. Don't be that guy. Also, we have a special event this Thursday night. That's probably what the issue was. So, who here really loves Tori Roberg, the Second Coalition for Arizona? Raise your hand. Awesome. Second Coalition. Tori Roberg, is our secular lobbyist in the Valley here. She goes to the Capitol and she actually tries to talk. I don't know about how much sense she gets through, but she tries to talk to them at least. And our legislatures. She's trying to talk to our legislatures. And she's going to give us an update of what happened in this session from January up until May, I believe, and give us kind of a recap of what our legislatures were doing at the Capitol this year. So that's going to be Thursday night at 6 p.m. Doors open at 5, so if you want to grab food or a slice of pizza or something, you probably want to come in early before it's all gone. So we'll see you there at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock this Thursday night for Tori's presentation. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, we have National Space Society rents a place out on Saturday, once a month on Saturday, I believe. And they've got a really cool one this month if you want to check it out. It's Dr. Troy Howe is going to speak about radioisotope power sources used for deep space missions for electrical power when solar just won't do. So if you want to learn about some really cool tech, it's going to be happening on this Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning, not night, too late. Also, final announcement here, our book club is going to be on Einstein's Dream by Alan Lightman. That's a modern classic fiction about what Einstein would have dreamed about. Essentially, it's going to be about, in 1905, the dreams are about time, relativity, and physics. As the defiant but sensitive young genius is creating his theory of relativity, a new conception of time, he imagines many possible worlds. So it's going to be an interesting book. That's going to be August 25th, so if you're willing to pick it up, it's Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman. We'll see you at the book club meeting August 25th at 10 o'clock. Bill, where are you at? Bill? Come on up, Bill. I'd like Bill to tell you a little bit about himself and some sad news.
And I have the Humanist Minute.
He does.
I requested to be able to do it today because I'm moving. I actually slept on an air mattress in my own bedroom last night because my bed is packed. So I'll be back down from Utah where we're moving to fix up the house and to probably come down for the Renaissance Festival and something like that. But you will see me around, but you'll see me a lot less because I'm taking off. So I wanted, along with the Humanist Minute, which is a little old Scoutmaster minute that I learned when I was in Scouts quite a bit, to just take a moment and tell everybody thank you. HSGP for me has been, I've been a member for about a year and a half, has been an oasis in my life. going through faith transition, lots of mind expanding, amazing experiences. You need the opportunity to rub shoulders with like-minded people, and you guys have been my people. So I thank you for that. I appreciate the community that's here. I appreciate everyone taking whatever talent you have, if it's music or philosophy or crocheting, and contributing that to the community. I wish I had more time to contribute the talents that I have to the community, but I'm a pretty busy guy. So I've done what I can, and I've really enjoyed it here, and I thank all of you for making this thing happen. It'll be a challenge for me where I'm going. I'll just have to build my own HSGP from what I understand. Okay, so here's a quick thought. This is just a little parable that I used to tell to the scouts. It's about a farmer who's out plowing the field outside of the village near a crossroads. When a traveler comes by with all of his stuff, clearly he's moving, which is apropos for me right now. And he stops to talk to the guy who's plowing the field, and they get talking about the community, and he asks the farmer what the village is like that's at the crossroads there, and the farmer asks him, well, what was the place where you came from like? And he said, oh, the people there were amazing. He said it was hard to leave because he loved the people. They were friendly, and if it wasn't for family reasons, he wouldn't be leaving, but he needed to relocate. And so he asked the farmer, what are the people like in the village? And he says, I think you'll find the people in the village much the same as the people where you came from. A day later, he's out plowing the field again behind his beast of burden, staring at the rump when another guy comes by, obviously moving because he's got his family and all of his stuff on his wagon. And he stops and visits with the farmer. The farmer likes to visit because plowing is pretty boring. And this guy's obviously relocating too. And so they get to talking about the area. And he asks him, like, what are the people like in this village up ahead? And the farmer asks, well, what are the people like where you came from? And he said, I was never happy where I came from. I'm literally moving to get away from the people there because they were not friendly. I never felt like I fit in. And I'm hoping to be able to find better people than those that were my neighbors before. And the farmer's answer to him from his question was, I think you'll find the people in the village ahead to be much the same.
The caveat to that story is the second guy was moving away from the first guy. Well, thank you, Bill. You've been a major asset to this community, and thank you for all your primitive technology talks. And you took care of the yard, the children's yard, the grass, and sadly, we're looking for another person to kind of step into that role. So if you'd like to help us with the children's yard, we'd appreciate it. Just needs a little trim here and there once in a while. Anyway, thank you again. That is our Humanist Minute. If you've got a Humanist Minute you'd like to share with us, something that really emphasizes humanism, nailed it, Bill, nailed it. We'd like to talk to you, so come on up if you'd like to share your Humanist Minute with me after the talk, and we'll set you up for next time. Now I'd like to introduce Pam to come up and introduce our speaker.
I am crying. That was really nice, Bill. Thank you. Well, I'm very excited about our speaker today, and a couple of thank you. Mike, where are you? Mike, right in front. Thank you for introducing us to Roger, and Richard, thank you for staying in touch with Roger and making sure he showed up here. So, it does take a village even here at the Humanist Society. So let me tell you a little bit about Roger Featherstone. Since 2009, Roger Featherstone has been the director of the Arizona Mining Reform Coalition. The coalition works to reform national, state, and regional rules and regulations governing hard rock mining and supports our coalition members to stop inappropriate mines in Arizona. From May of 2004 to October of 2009, Roger was the circuit rider for Earthworks, I'm saying all this right, working to protect communities and the environment of the West from the impact of hard rock mining. Before this, Roger spent a year in Alaska as the campaign director for ARM. In 2001, Roger Featherstone was the Stop the Rollbacks campaign manager for the Mineral Policy Center campaign. In '95, he founded and directed the Grassroots Environmental Effectiveness Network, GREEN, based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. As director of GREEN, Roger built a nationwide network of citizens working to protect wildlife and wildlands and published Green Lines, a daily electronic newsletter about wildlife and wildland news. Mr. Featherstone was board treasurer of the Cornucopia Institute for more than 10 years, the national grassroots coordinator of the Endangered Species Coalition, is a founder and board chair of the Mount Graham Coalition, sorry, a lot, and producer for the Green Fire Project, an educational and inspirational organization that promotes wilderness values, and organized for both the Rainforest Action Network and Earth First. Roger also has worked on and off for 33 years with Northern Thunder, a Wisconsin-based community environmental organization. So needless to say, he's a busy man, and we really appreciate him taking the time to come and talk to us. So help me welcome Roger Featherstone.
Thanks, Pam. Is this mic working? Yeah. Good. I'll have to apologize in advance. I think some of my titles, the capitalization is going to be a little off because this system doesn't have the same fonts, but bear with me. So Pam went through a little bit about the mission statement of the Arizona Mining Reform Coalition. Basically, we do two types of things. One is we watchdog existing mines. We make sure that if a new mine goes in, that it's appropriate. And I'll just say right up front, all the new mining proposals here in Arizona are not appropriate. They're irresponsible proposals. So basically, there you have it. The other half of our mission statement basically is the reform national and state mining laws. The overriding law that governs mining on public lands in the United States was signed into law by Ulysses S. Grant in 1872 and hasn't been revised since, although there have been many attempts. So that again explains a lot as to why a lot of our West is really trashed. So we're working on that, obviously not very well in the current political climate. And then for state laws, basically Arizona has the worst state mining laws of any state in the nation. So we're in the basement there. And I like to say one of the reasons why is the Arizona State Constitution was written by Mr. Phelps and Mr. Dodge. And later in the slideshow, I'm going to go through a lot of different stuff, so hopefully I won't get bogged down and we'll get through it all. But our state agencies are even trying to do take over some federal programs to make things even worse. So eventually we'll work on state reform, but that'll be a while in coming, unless we get a real sea change here. Our coalition members, we're a pretty diverse lot. Native American groups, retired miners, climbing organizations, just a whole bunch of different types of groups that are part of the coalition. And so let me talk first about Oak Flat. Oak Flat is anybody here not familiar with our fight to protect Oak, or doesn't know about, I wouldn't say familiar with our fight to protect Oak Flat? A few not, okay. Oak Flat is an hour east of here, just east of the town of Superior, up on a kind of a mesa above the town of Superior. It actually started out as far as not Native American history, but white history, basically. It was a stagecoach stopover between Globe and Phoenix. So that's kind of where the campground itself got its start. But it's a real beautiful area. It's a sacred ecological and recreational haven under the attack by two of the largest mining companies in the world, Rio Tinto, based in London and in Australia, and then also BHP Billiton, also based in London and Australia. Did go through some quick pictures here. A coming of age ceremony that took place at Oak Flat a couple of years ago. A lot of long history of Native American use of the Oak Flat area. Some old petroglyphs. Climbers using Oak Flat. Ordinary citizens protesting to protect Oak Flat. Basically, in 2003, Rio Tinto and BHP formed a company called Resolution Copper, wholly owned by those two companies, and they want to build an underground mine that would be very destructive in a sacred area. And instead of going through the regular NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy Act process that lays out how permitting happens for mines on public lands, they went straight to Congress to get an exemption from those laws that would give them Oak Flat, that would privatize Oak Flat. And that was done by our wonderful Senator John McCain by attaching it on the Defense Authorization Act in 2014 in the dead of night. Since then, it's important to realize that although this law would allow Rio Tinto to take possession of Oak Flat 60 days after the publishing of a final environmental impact statement, until that day, that land is still owned by us, the American people. It's public land, so we have every right to continue to use and enjoy Oak Flat. And we've had bills in Congress now to repeal that land exchange. Here's the latest version up there, introduced in the House by Raul Grijalva and in the Senate by Senator Bernie Sanders. And we'll need to do our best the rest of the season to push for that. So if any of you have ties to congressional districts, in states outside of Arizona, be sure to put pressure on those members of Congress to sign on to this act. In Arizona here, the people that are with us have already done it, and the people that are against us obviously won't. So we're kind of stuck there. But in the next Congress, starting in January, we'll get those bills reintroduced again, and then we'll have a chance in this next Congress to push for that land exchange bill. Beautiful place Oak Flat is. I guess I should put this thing. Let me see if I can. Is it fine? Okay. If you wanna camp at Oak Flat in the campground Easter weekend, you better reserve a spot a good week ahead of time because it's packed. Yeah, so it's a very popular spot. Swimming holes with year-round water. So what Rio Tinto wants to do is build an underground, what they call a block cave mine, which you can envision as being basically an upside down open pit. So instead of going from the top down, they start at the bottom of the ore body, which is a mile underground, actually 7,000 feet underground, and they create an infrastructure at the bottom of the ore body, and then they start blasting, and the ore collapses down into the structure they built, and then they haul it away and process it. And of course, when that happens, the surface subsides, and basically the mine would create a crater 2 miles wide, 2.5 miles wide, and 1,000 foot deep. And then there would be a void that's a cubic mile in diameter, a mile underground, if they actually pull this off. And of course, that would ruin not only Oak Flat itself, but because all the water would be drained down to 7,000 feet, it would de-water all the surrounding area as well. And if that wasn't bad enough, they want to build a tailings facility that would be at least between 5,000 and 7,000 acres on our public land that would again be totally destroyed forever.
What's a tailing?
The tailing, it's basically a waste dump, basically. What they do is the rock that comes from underground gets crushed to the consistency of talcum powder. And then it goes to the processing facility, and they take out the copper and the gold and the silver and the molybdenum. And then they slurry the remains, which is 98.5% at least of the rock they take out of the ground. And they just dump it on the federal land. And of course, there's all kinds of nasty stuff in the tailings pile. And all of the versions of the plan now call for an unlined facility. So basically, you just dump this on the ground. And the location they want to use for dumping that is between the town of Superior and Queen Valley, in the Queen Creek watershed, basically right across the street from Boyce Thompson Arboretum. So basically, if you guys know the town of Superior, is you come up, if you're coming from Phoenix, if you come up and over Gonzales Pass, you see Picket Post Mountain off to the south, to your right. The ore body, according to Rio Tinto, is the size of Picket Post Mountain. So imagine Picket Post Mountain ground to the consistency of talcum powder and then dumped across the street on the north side of Highway 60. So that's, and then the real beauty of this from Rio Tinto's standpoint is all they're planning on doing is concentrating the ore, which will get it in a semi-finished state, and then they'll take it on rail cars down to the port of Guaymas in Mexico, put it on ships, and then send it probably to China, certainly overseas, for final processing. Senator McCain said that this mine was necessary for national security. Maybe he means national security for China, but basically, so here we are. We're giving this ore body to Rio Tinto for free. They take it overseas, and then they sell the finished product back to us at retail rates, basically. And then the other thing, I guess the font difference also kind of cut off a little bit of the things on the bottom. But the other thing that people aren't looking at really on this is there a pointer on this?
Yeah.
Yes.
The red line.
So there's an existing railroad line that goes from Superior down to Magma to I-10, where it gets to the Union Pacific. So along this corridor, basically, because they don't have enough water, this mine would use the same amount of water as the city of Tempe every year. So what they're planning on doing is they're buying water credits from the Central Arizona Project, which of course is a Ponzi scheme. Whether there'll actually be water left there when Rio Tinto thinks they need it or not is an open question. So their backup plan basically is to drill between 30 and 35 water wells along this corridor to suck this area dry for their makeup water. And of course, hard rock mines in the state of Arizona are exempt from Arizona water law. So.
Why they need the water as a slurry?
Well, they need a lot of water for processing. Basically, they need water to facilitate crushing that ore. They need water for the slurring. They need water for the processing, basically to get the copper and the moly out. And then they also need water to basically cover parts of the most toxic part of the tailings pile. So these things use a lot of water.
Where was Senator Flake on this?
Well, Senator Flake actually, after he did his Mormon missionary work in Namibia, went to work for Rio Tinto at their Rossing uranium mine. the uranium mine that's co-owned by the Iranian government. So Senator Flake actually worked for Rio Tinto before he became a senator. So needless to say, he's been a solid supporter of the project. Now that he's supposedly a nice guy, well, who knows what'll happen. So I guess I got a little bit ahead of myself. This talks about the block cave itself, the area that would be destroyed at Oak Flat, and then here's the tailings facility, 1.5 billion tons of toxic waste, 4.5 miles upstream from the town of Queen Valley. Rio Tinto's own studies show that the tailings would start to generate acid within 90 days of being laid down on the ground.
So where's the EPA on this?
The what?
The EPA.
What's that?
The EPA has EPA has no. Actually, the environmental impact statement is written by the U.S. Forest Service, who will be the lead agency. The EPA does have veto right over that at some point in time, but that's because there's not, in the current configuration, there's not a they don't need what's called the 404 dredge and fill permit. EPA is not really in the flow at all. So
If that's a powder, will our monsoon dust storms pick that up and blow it into the valley?
not according to Rio Tinto, but if you
What
go.
was the question?
He asked if it's ground to the consistency of talcum powder, won't it blow around? And if you if you go down to Green Valley to the tailings piles there, and how many times the Phelps Dodge Freeport-McMoran has had to pay for people to have their cars repainted from the tailings dust blowing there, or the tailings piles, dust blowing off of the tailings from the Ray mine, Hanen and Wickelman, yeah, that's a real problem. But again, not according to the company. So a lot of wildlife at Oak Flat. These are quadamundis. Have people seen quadamundis in the wild? They're pretty. They call it. They travel in troops basically, and they always have their tails stuck straight up. So they're quite the animal. And to my knowledge, this is the northernmost spot in Arizona that they hang out with quite a bit of regularity, and they'd have a tough time as it goes through. So the Forest Service started the review process for permitting the mine in 2016. We generated a total of 133,000 comments. Some of those were pro-mine, but there was easily, I would say, 120,000 against the proposal. Now the Forest Service is analyzing all of those comments, and they're preparing a draft environmental impact statement that they say will be ready for public review maybe in June of next year. And so we're really starting to gear up for that, because there'll be a comment period as soon as that's released. And we have to beat our 130,000 comments on that draft. And so we're really gearing up for being able to combat what the Forest Service will be putting in that draft environmental impact statement. After the impact statement is released, the draft will comment on it. The Forest Service will analyze all those comments. They'll have a few public meetings, and then they will spend a year according to their plan and write a final environmental impact statement. And when that's released, according to the land exchange law, Rio Tinto will be able to get ownership of that land 60 days, ownership of Oak Flat 60 days after the publishing of that final, but long before the appeal process for that final is over. I should note that while Rio Tinto really wants to own Oak Flat, where the ore body is, they desperately do not want to own the tailings facility. They want that to remain on public land, because obviously their plan will be, as soon as they're done, they'll go belly up and leave, and then the maintenance of that tailings pile will be up to us, the owners of the land. There's endangered Arizona hedgehog cactus at Oak Flat. This is the cactus in full bloom. Unfortunately, there's not as much protection for endangered plants as there is endangered animals. But it's just a real precious place. Let me switch gears now and we'll go south of Tucson to the Rosemont Project. One great history lesson basically for mine fights is every fight we win, the only thing we know for sure in most cases is that we'll have to fight it all over again. But every time we lose forever. And that's a good situation, a good example here at Rosemont. 25 years ago now, Serco wanted to put a mine at Rosemont, and one of our member groups, Save the Scenic Santa Rita's, geared up, fought it big time, and they beat it. They won. Peace County had a chance to buy up that land for conservation purposes, and chose not to. And then a junior mining company from Canada came down and bought it up and started this fight all over again. But this would be in the Santa Rita Mountains south of Tucson. The Las Ciénegas National Conservation Area is one of the areas that would be dewatered. Here's Green Valley. Tucson would be up here. The Santa Rita Mountains themselves. Incredibly diverse wildlife corridor, also sacred to Tohono O'odham and Pasco Ayaki tribes, other tribes as well. So this would be an open pit mine. Some of it's already, you'll notice that a lot of ore bodies in Arizona across the west are on private land. The 1872 mining law that I talked about earlier allowed, up until 1993, allowed anybody to, if they proved there were minerals on that land, they allowed them to buy that federal land for $5 an acre. That's still 1872 prices. And that's still written into the law. Every year Congress passes a moratorium stopping that patenting, but that could change at every time. So most ore bodies in Arizona have already been patented, already on private property, not Oak Flat, but so most of this Rosemont mine, again, the pit would be on private land, but the waste dump would be on, again, public lands. So, and this would be a regular open pit. The pit would be, oops, I'm confusing my, the open pit would be a mile wide, almost half a mile deep. And then that would be another huge water suck, because while they're mining, they'll have to pump all the water out so the bottom of the mine is dry. And then when they finish up, they turn the pumps off, and it'll create a pit lake, basically. So it'll fill back up. So our hydrologists tell us it'll take 1,000 years, basically, to reach equilibrium after 30 years of mining. Santa Rita Mountains are home to jaguars. Are a couple other endangered plants and animals. It's a huge wildlife corridor to bring for wildlife to travel back and forth between Mexico and here. Right now, the ADQ, the state has given all the permits they need to give to the project. Of course, we fought every single one of them. The Forest Service has granted our says they're gonna sign the permits. They can't do that though until the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers signs or decides whether to give them a permit for dredging and filling waters of the U.S. So that the EPA is definitely involved in this fight. The Army Corps administers the 404 program as part under the auspices of the EPA. EPA has signaled that this is the worst environmental impact statement they'd ever read. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has indicated that they're contemplating denying the dredge and fill permit, but we'll wait and see. They could make that decision any time, and with the current climate in the federal agencies, your guess is as good as mine whether they'll follow through on their initial feelings of wanting to deny the permit. Meanwhile, the Forest Service decision has been sued by 3 different groups. The Center for Biological Diversity has sued over biological opinion that was written that shows that, according to the Fish and Wildlife Service's political arm, that it wouldn't harm jaguars or ocelots or any other critters. So the center is sued over that. A coalition of groups, including the Arizona Mine Reform Coalition, has sued the Forest Service over the decision to permit the mine. And then the Tohono-O'odham Nation and the Pasco, Yaqui, and Hopi tribes have also sued. All 3 of those suits have been combined into one proceeding, basically, and we've just begun the briefing schedule on that. So that'll all play out over the next year or so. Santa Rita's there's been ocelots, or jaguars photographed there, ocelots followed there. Pam, there's your ocelot right there.
Okay, thank you.
There's, we talked about that a little earlier. In 2010, between Oak Flat and the little hamlet of Top of the World, a young male ocelot was killed on Highway 60. And that's, ocelots are endangered. So we've talked to the best cat biologist in the Southwest, and there may be more ocelots at Oak Flat, so we're also looking for those there. But they're definitely down closer to the border, so that would be impacted. And then the endangered plant at the Rosemont area, Coleman Coral Route. Okay, I'm running short on time here, but let's go through. The other thing that I really want people to be aware of is, so we've talked about block cave mining, the underground bad mining type. We've talked about open pit mining. Now the new thing they want to do in Arizona is what's called in-situ mining. It's never been done commercially for copper, but it's been done a lot for uranium. And what you do basically in in-situ mining, you drill a well and you inject sulfuric acid into the ground, which dissolves the minerals from the rock. And then you pump that solution back up and you extract the minerals, and then you just reuse that solution. So by very definition, in-situ mining is the intentional pollution of groundwater. What better place to pollute groundwater than in Arizona, where we have this tremendous lack of water?
Yeah.
And it's important to note that no in-situ mine anywhere in the world has ever returned the groundwater to pre-mining conditions. So every in-situ mine has polluted the groundwater. And this is being counted by the mining industry as green mining, because all they have is a well field. And frankly, we're in it, basically. As far as the Arizona Mining Reform Coalition is concerned in Arizona, in-situ mining should be a non-starter. But yet, we have a project up by Florence, the Florence Copper Project, which the town of Florence is fighting. The town of Florence actually condemned the 2,000 acres of private property the company owned to build a sewage treatment plant. I'm not sure where that is in the courts, but that was their way of fighting the project. However, a small portion of the project was on state trust land, and our trustee, ADEQ, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, bent over backwards to permit a test facility of 24 wells that's currently under construction there. A bigger project that we're fighting right now is down by Dragoon, basically, if you're going south, or if you're going east on I-10 from Tucson, you go up and over Texas Canyon, and between there and Wilcox, right on the edge of the Wilcox Playa, they want to build this mine that would have 1,400 wells injecting 7.3 million gallons of sulfuric acid into the ground every day. And it's not a problem according to the state or actually EPA right now, because those injection wells say they pump water at 100 gallons per minute. The take-up wells will pump water back out at 101 gallons per minute. So they're saying that that difference in flow basically will keep the pollution from spreading. We beg to differ. We've appealed the EPA's permit for this project, and we'll see what the EPA says about that during the appeal. That's what the area looks like right now. Okay, state issues. About a year or so ago, Scott Pruitt, former head of the EPA, had a meeting with Governor Ducey and asked the state of Arizona to take over what's called primacy. The Clean Water Act, as envisioned by Congress, allowed states to apply to create their own programs to administer the federal law in their states. And ADQ was successful involving parts of the Clean Water Act for mine permitting, so that's where we're already in trouble. And now they want to go back and get the rest of the portions of the Clean Water Act from control from the EPA. And they want to go for two programs. One is what I talked about earlier in the Rosemont mine, the dredge and fill permit, what's called the 404B. They want to take over that program, and then they want to take over the underground injection control program, UIC, which also would govern the wells that would need to be drilled for in-situ mining. So they want to get all of these applications into the EPA by spring of 2020, just before the presidential elections. They swear up and down that's a coincidence as far as the timing. They got the state legislature to enact laws that allow them to ask for the taking over these programs. Basically, as many of you know, whatever the mining industry wants from the state legislature, they get. The ADQ wants to run both of these programs is pay to play, basically. If you want a permit, you pay the ADQ to give you the permit, basically. ADQ doesn't have the expertise. They don't have anything to do with enforcing their permits. And of course, they're susceptible to pressure from industry. During the meetings on this, they talked continually about dealing with their customers. It was all customer-based, which is just abhorrent. The company, the ADQ, is supposed to be the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, not the Arizona Department of permitting whatever the mining industry wants. And so obviously ADQ feels their customers are the mining industry and big business, and not our air and water. This is their primacy timeline, that right there is the reason not to give ADQ control over their program if they write a, a timeline like that. But they basically created some working groups. They've had meetings. They'll go back and forth, but in the end, they hope to get their permit, their application off the EPA spring of 2020. We talked a little bit about the injection control permit. They're even worse as far as, they're getting a lot of flack. Actually, they're getting flack on the 404 permitting, even from some folks in the mining industry. Because, you know, it's just so problematic. But the UIC permit, the Underground Injection Control Program permit, is flying under the radar, and so they're giving a lot less attention. They're not creating the work groups they did for the 404. They're basically doing it all in-house. They'll have a couple of public meetings, and then they'll try to pull it over on us. So both of these programs, they will have at some point in time public input. Kind of in closing things up, here's their timeline for the UIC, again, spring of 2020. So kind of in wrapping things up, we've got a lot of things that folks can weigh in on all of these projects. On Oak Flat, we'll have the comment period coming up for the draft environmental impact statement late next spring or next summer, unless we can delay that even further, which of course we're hoping to do. We'll need help to make sure that the repeal bill passes through Congress in the next session. So that'll need a lot of input from people. Actually, on Rosemont, we'll just need loud opposition and support of our lawsuit at this point in time. And depending on what the Army Corps does, there might be some things in there. On the in-situ mines, there again, we'll just need folks to weigh in on. But the state processes for taking over primacy, there will be public comment periods on both of those. So we need you guys to help us reach out to Congress and federal agencies and the decision makers. We need volunteers. I'm a one-man shop basically, and I work half-time. so I need a lot of help. Some people think I need more help than others. Like all of us, we need money, so if folks want to make a donation. Somewhere here in the front, we've got a sign-up sheet for volunteers and just for more information. And so be sure and come up here and sign in, or actually maybe we should just send that around. But we just want to circulate it for a few minutes. One thing we talked about earlier is, so we have this camera project, those photos of the Quadamundis. Those came from one of our wildlife cameras. I've got 10 wildlife cameras down in Oak Flat, spread across 25 square miles. And that project's been going on now 6 years, over 6 years. And so we have tens of thousands of photographs that all need to be entered into a database between now and the end of the year, so we can analyze those to counter what's going to be in the draft environmental impact statement. So if anybody wants the glamorous task of going through photographs and helping put them in a database, let us know, let me know. And then if we've got some good hikers out there, every couple months I need to go out and check those cameras, check the batteries, and download the photos and everything. And I could sure use a hiking buddy or two to help out with that. It's rugged work, but it's a beautiful place. So that'll be a fun method of volunteering. And then we'll need a lot of help basically in writing comments and doing research and and all that kind of real fun stuff. Our website is in real need of revising, so that's another thing. Anyhow, I've gone through a lot of stuff, but so far, even though our website is way out of date, it's still working. So go to the website azminingreform.org, and from the front page you can sign up for our action alerts, and that way on any of these issues and more, if there's something that you can do, we'll send you an action alert for that. And then we have Facebook pages and a Twitter feed. Yes?
Hold on a second, because I want to get your comments and questions on the microphone. So first of all, thank you. This is very informative, and we're going to if you have a question or comment, raise your hand and let me get you the microphone.
Thanks, this is a great talk. I do want to ask you, is there any kind of mining that would be good? I mean, we do need minerals, and I also wanted to ask you, with the election coming up, is there any advice you would like to give us about who to vote for or who not to vote for?
No.
Well, since take the last one first, is I would like to, but because
No
the
candidates, no
coalition,
candidates.
yeah, because
We're nonprofit.
the coalition is nonprofit, we can't do that either. So we can't tell you there. As far as the first part, having a senior moment. What was the first part again?
If there is.
Oh, what
any
kind of mines are good?
mining, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of went rough. Well, in general, our position is, unfortunately, most of these new mines, both the case of Rosemont and the case of Oak Flat, they're planning on sending their concentrates overseas for final processing. So that has absolutely no benefit to the United States, to us at all. So that's just a no-brainer. These in-situ mines, it's unclear where they would do their final processing, either here or overseas. Their plans aren't clear. So our feeling is basically we've got a number of existing mines in Arizona. Some are better than others, but they're all have done pretty much most of the damage they're ever going to do. And most of those mines have a lot of life left and are not working at full capacity. The Pinto Valley mine, for example, they just are going for an expansion now to operate until 2035. So what we would rather do is to have them actually mine out their existing mines before they ruin a brand new place. A good example is BHP Billiton, which is a co-owner of the Oak Flat project, had a perfectly good working mine at San Manuel, an underground and open pit operation that had 30 years of proven reserves. And in 2004, they not only closed down that mine, they destroyed all of the facilities, including a working smelter. And so they had 30 years of proven copper underground, and they walked away from it, and now they want to destroy Oak Flat. So I think that's the other part of the whole process is to don't do stupid things like that. And I guess in general, if you and I were to start a mine, and it would be a huge mine like this, even under our best intentions, we're still going to screw up at some point in time because these things are so massive. They're 5,000-10,000 acres. And so it's virtually impossible to have a perfect large mine. So maybe you can do a good smaller mine. So I guess the answer is mine what you're already got started and do it right, because we're gonna hound you, we're gonna watch over you to make sure you do. And then if you do need a new mine after those are mined out, then try to go for smaller operations that actually can be looked at better.
Thank you. I'm not asking about the candidates, but we are, a mine inspector is up for election in November. What is the role of that position? And I'd just like to know what, and neither candidate, by the way, was endorsed by the Sierra Club, so I guess they're both equally bad.
No, not true.
Not true.
Not true, okay,
Well,
I'm
there-
not talking about the candidates, but what
There
does
is
the
a
job
difference.
Talk
entail?
about the candidate.
You know, I'm honestly, I'm not that sure what the mine inspector mostly works on mine safety issues. And certainly does a lot of work with abandoned mines in Arizona. But other than that, the mine inspector really doesn't have a whole lot to do with most monitored mines other than mine safety. Excuse me, we did have, actually one of the groups we work with in Superior, the Concerned Citizens and Retired Miners Coalition, which is, as the name implies, made up of retired miners. Chairman of that group actually contemplated running for mine inspector, but decided not to because he didn't have the resources. And so that would have been an excellent situation. But the mine inspector really doesn't have a lot to do with these kinds of mines. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat here. Next
Over
question.
here, and then I'll get you guys in the front.
I don't know that, I mean, I don't know much about mining. I know that they have been doing something called fracking in Oklahoma, and it has caused earthquakes. Is there any indication that something like this in situ mining, which goes down underneath and breaks things up, and is it relevant? Is it similar, or is it safer than the fracking? Because I hate earthquakes. That's why I moved from California.
Well, it's the in situ process does not involve, with fracking, you basically inject sand into the ground basically to open up the pores of the rock to get the oil out. And this, in situ, what you're doing is you're injecting acid down to basically to dissolve the rock. So I don't think that you can talk about fracking in situ and it's kind of the same thing. As far as earthquakes, though, I mean, whenever you're moving that much rock around, you're basically screwing with a process that's taken billions of years to kind of reach equilibrium. And whenever you change that quickly over the course of a couple years, you're going to have consequences. And these underground operations at Oak Flat, there's a very real possibility at 7,000 feet down of some of those rocks actually exploding once the pressure is released when they start that process. So you can't rule out basically earthquakes from modern mines just from the weight of the tailings on the surface could destabilize. So there's whole, and of course the mining companies say no problem, it's never going to happen. But you know, the Santa Ritas basically have had earthquakes, and so that's something that we've really picked up on for design. So at any rate, I don't think for in situ we would see the same type of earthquakes you would for fracking, but it has another whole set of problems.
Okay, it seems like Oak Flat is real close to Arabipa Canyon.
No.
Oh, it's not?
Not real close.
Not real, I mean, is it close enough to be damaged by this operation?
Probably not. I mean, the Ray mine is actually closer.
Okay. And another thing, I did talk to one of the candidates for mine inspector yesterday, and I asked him to come here, and they were interested in doing it, but they didn't do it, so.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask about the in-situ mining, because I was under the impression that the pipes would go down to the ore body below the water table, and that the acid and such would pass up and down through the pipes without contaminating the water, the aquifer. That's what they say happens, at least with fracking. I don't know, but you say that's never happened, that when this is a technology which has been practiced in other places, is that correct?
Yeah, basically And that's the other funny thing about, just miraculously, every modern mining deposit is completely sealed off from the drinking water above. You know, all the mines, you know, it's a perched aquifer on top of it. There's either a layer of clay or there's rock that's impermeable, and so there's no problem. But with in situ, yes, you basically you drill down through the upper water tables into the ore body area itself, and you're supposed to seal off all of that area above. But there's the whole host of problems dealing with, you know, the infallibility of man, basically. Did you actually do a good job in sealing that off? What about all of those wells and holes that have been poked into the ground over the last 100 years that may or may not have been recorded and may or may not have been done with the same level of consistency? What happens if water uses one of those features to move up and down? But the big problem with in situ is that when the pollution starts to migrate from the depth of that ore body, who knows where it's going to come up? So that's mainly where the problem lies.
Can you give us any examples of laws that other states have enacted to protect the environment when it comes to mining?
Yeah, well, California actually has a backfill law, basically, regarding open pits in California. If you make an open pit, you have to fill it back in when you're done. So that's one. Other states have better bonding requirements. In the state of Arizona, if a mining company is supposed to post a bond to the state, but they're allowed to do what's called a corporate guarantee, which is basically the mining company just writes an IOU to the state. I have a lot of money, don't worry about it, we'll just have money when it's over. At least for the feds, the bond, even though it's lowballed, basically, even though the feds never ask for enough money, at least that's money that's laid down in cash from the beginning. So a lot of the states have better laws regarding bonding and that kind of thing. The state of Alaska, which has mostly pretty weak mining laws, actually when it comes to bonding, they basically have a public meeting every 5 years to review the bond and the reclamation, which a lot of other states don't. So there's things like that regarding bonding, regarding California has a state, basically mini NEPA, their own version of the National Environmental Policy Act. Arizona has none of that. So there's a lot of things that Arizona could take a look at it for modeling from other states.
Regarding the in situ, the acid is poured down there and dissolves the rock. Is there any danger of collapse, subsidence?
Not from that. The bigger danger, of course, is when you're dissolving. You want to dissolve the copper and stuff you want to get, but you're also dissolving all kinds of other nasty stuff that's down there too. But regarding subsidence, I think the bigger problem there would be just because you're pumping out more water than you're putting in, there'd be the problem of subsidence from that more than the rock being dissolved.
But there would be danger.
Yes, yes.
Anybody else? Did I miss anybody? Oh, one more.
Yeah, after this is all done and the mining company's done, can't they just go into bankruptcy and not fix all the stuff they screwed up?
Yes, and that's normally what they do. That's kind of standard operating procedure. That was actually, you know, the reason for bonding in the first place. But again, the state law doesn't require the cash bonding, and even regarding the feds, you know, I think a good example of that is the Summitville disaster in southern Colorado, a gold mine done by a Canadian junior called Galactica, that basically completely destroyed 25 miles of the Animas River from a tailings dam break that polluted the whole river. And the company just went belly up and walked away. And basically the company, over the course of the life of the mine, before they declared bankruptcy, pulled $65 million worth of gold out of that mine. But so far, it's taken the state of Colorado and taxpayers $200 million to clean it up, and they're not even close to being done. So, you know, you got to ask yourself, is that sustainable mining?
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Please help me thank Roger.
Thank you.
So, we have a tradition here at HSGB to mug our speakers. So thank you very much for making the trip and coming up here to talk to us with your very busy schedule. It's really great.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, and please come on up. If you the petition or whatever's going around, we'll have it up here in the front for you to talk to Roger and also to sign it.
Wow, that was amazing. Let's give another round of applause for our speaker. Thanks so much, Roger. Just a quick reminder, we are going to lunch right after this. We're just going to be our lunch leader for that, so do head out to that unless you're going to be practicing with our Flying Spaghetti Monster singers or you're going to be helping us plan Flying Spaghetti Monster dinner. The singers will be out in the library and we'll be out here to plan the party. So, before that, if you could help us clean up a little bit, take some food home if you're not going to be joining us for lunch, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for showing up. Take care.